Moana 2 has dropped in theaters and it is crushing box office records. So today I'm going to do a tier ranking of the modern era of Disney animated films. While you're watching, if you want to join in on the fun, I've got a link down below in the description where you can create your own tier ranking. If you take a screen capture of it, post it on Instagram, tag me in your stories with it. I will reshare some of your tier rankings of the modern era of Disney films. As we go into this, there's a little bit of debate as to exactly when the Disney revival started and are we in a new post-revival era currently. As for me, I just looked at when did they start being profitable again after the post-Renaissance lull, and for me, it looks like Bolt is where they started to have another hit film again and have had a pretty good run ever since then. With that said, let's get started. We're gonna go through these in release order, so we're kicking things off with Bolt. And I'll cut right to the chase. I think Bolt is good, so it'll go in our B tier. It's a charming enough story about a dog that thinks that he's a superhero because he stars on a superhero show. It's a little bit like Disney's dog superhero version of The Truman Show, and then he gets lost, then he's on this road trip. It's a pretty classic formula of mistaken identity of sorts of the character themselves combined with a road trip. You are a toy!
Is that real? Does this look real to you? Or that? Is that real? Or that?
So it's heartfelt, it's cute, it's charming. I don't think it's like a fantastic film, but it's a good film. It doesn't also feel like a Disney movie. In the classic sense where so many of them are, about princesses or adaptations of classic stories. So this feels like a movie that a different studio would make or has made. But all that to say, it's enjoyable. Then we have The Princess and the Frog. In the past, I viewed this as the start of the revival since it is a return to a princess story. In the case of this one, it's the classic tale of the frog princess told in the context of New Orleans. It's classic 2D animation, and it's gorgeous as it was kind of the peak of what they'd been working towards for decades and decades and decades up to that point in time before they really made a hard pivot towards going full-blown computer animated. In a number of ways, it kind of subverts expectations with where the story starts and kind of how it goes. When I thought the story was really going in one direction, hard goes in the other way. So it's a new twist. It's not just leading into the cliches, but it's also not one that I really enjoy all that much. And a lot of it is that it's a movie that's set largely in a swamp with all sorts of just like base level scatological humor with spitting, mucus, toothless flies. There's a literal shot of a guy scooping poop in it. Ew. And it's just not the setting where I want to dwell with the princess story. Beyond that, I'm just not really into a lot of the music on here either. None of the songs have stood out to me, so I gotta put this one in the C tier. It's just not for me. I understand it does have its fans, but I'm not one of them. Then we have Tangled. Here, Disney just kind of continued down that path of returning to the classic formula, musical, princess, period piece, based on classic stories, all of that fun stuff. Sometimes you want something fresh and exciting and totally different that subverts expectations, and sometimes you just want a classic formula executed nicely, and that's what I think this movie has to offer. Kind of dives into this idea of a princess who's lived her entire life in captivity, and she experiences freedom for the first time, so you get kind of the sweeping adventure that kind of comes along with that, which has humor, it has action, it has hijinks, it has all the songs that you want. But it also manages to kind of like tie that into the connection with her being stolen from her family and what that did to the community. And so it actually crescendos to some really nice emotional moments. The songs here lean into pop more than that classic Disney musical vibe or whatever you would call that. And so I I prefer the classic vibe to the pop version, but I still think they're good, memorable songs. So for me, this classic formula Disney film, it's going in the A tier. This is one of the best films that they have done in the in the 21st century. Moving right along, we have Winnie the Pooh, and this is a bit of an odd one because it seems so much like they were heading in kind of this one new direction to that kind of classic formula. And in the middle of all of this, they drop another Winnie the Pooh movie, which is a return to, the Dark Ages, the Bronze Age, which was not like one of their most successful eras. So just kind of a bit of an interesting choice that it kind of is sandwiched between Tangled and Wreck-It Ralph. It feels like such a product of such a wildly different time. But it's a film that's light, unassuming, and it is filled with all of the wordplay, the humor style that you expect from a Winnie the Pooh film. It's appropriately episodic, and in an era where every movie's trying to be bigger, louder, and faster, this is just classic Winnie the Pooh doing what Winnie the Pooh does, that calls all the way back to the original novels or books where they came from. So I think it does everything that it's trying to do, but am I someone that frequently goes back to this movie? No. I think it does exactly what it wants to do, but it's not, and I love all the charm of it, but I'm not someone that's like a massive Winnie the Pooh fan, so it'll go in that B category. Real quick, today's video is brought to you by my supporters over on Patreon. Over on Patreon, I do 2 weekly live streams, a number of exclusive videos, extended cuts, versions without ads turned on. If you like my content and want a lot more of it, in particular a little bit of that back and forth interaction, consider joining over on Patreon. And if you join this weekend using code Sean43, my birthday was a couple days ago, I turned 43, use code Sean43 and you can get 43% off an annual membership. That's like $16 at the lowest tier where you gain access to all the videos. The link is down below in the description, and now is quite literally the best time to sign up ever because I've never done a sale anywhere close to 43%. Use code Sean43 for that discount on an annual membership. Then we get another one that's a bit of an oddball, Wreck-It Ralph, where this movie feels like Disney doing a Pixar film, and in this case, it totally works. I'm throwing Wreck-It Ralph up in the S tier. This is such a fun combination of video game nostalgia with brand new characters. And it finds a way to just bring its own, does all this world building about where video game characters live, the rules of how the video games interact with one another, all leading to this very sweet, charming friendship between the villain of one video game and the secret princess of another in this race car game. It can be very funny. While it's not a musical, it has a great soundtrack to it. Just kind of everything here works for me. It's creative, but it's familiar. It's different from other things, but it doesn't feel like this alien thing that's way out there. It just pulls it all off. There's a solid twist towards the end of it. So for me, we're easily in the S tier. Then we've got the cultural juggernaut, Frozen. This is such an interesting one to me because I think Frozen on a structural level is a very broken film. If you stop and think about some of the logic of the film and the parents at the beginning of it, the choices that they make, there are so many big, gigantic issues with this movie. But I don't think all of that really matters all that much because it just has the Disney magic to it. So we're throwing this one in the A tier. Once you get past nitpicking structure and character choices, does it immerse you in this world with charming characters, quotable lines, and songs that we've been singing along to for over a decade now? Yeah, it does all of that. It delivers everything that it's supposed to deliver. And it did so well that it just had this massive cultural impact through doing that. I've got 2 little girls that have gone through their own Frozen phases. They've got the dresses, they've got the lunch boxes. And in fact, one of the songs in here is my backup karaoke song. So yeah, for me, this one goes in the A tier. Then Big Hero 6. This is an interesting one because it doesn't really feel like a Disney movie at all. And it's a Marvel movie. It doesn't feel like a Marvel movie at all. But at the end of the day, purpose here isn't to say how well it conforms to all the other movies in the category. The point is it a good movie? And to me, this is an A tier movie where they're able, once again, to build out this fascinating futuristic world with robots. They craft a story that is very heartbreaking, but not alienating to young children, that they can still handle it while you're getting invested in all of these different character dynamics. Baymax is such a charming, fun lead character in here. You get the superhero action. You get a supervillain who is absolutely villainous, but there's a side to what he's doing that makes sense and is rationalized. It's able to build everything up to have this nice crescendo at the end of it that has stakes. You feel the intensity, but also is like very satisfying and like a good old-fashioned happy ending. So while it might be a Disney and Marvel movie that does not seem like a Disney or Marvel movie, it is an A-tier movie. Next up, Zootopia. Fun fact on this one, this is the first movie that Liam and Chloe saw in the theater, so it'll always kind of have a special place in my heart. When I first saw the trailers, I thought it might be a dud. Like I didn't quite get it. And then the movie itself is just this fascinating blend of buddy cop investigation with a Disney skin on it, which an action buddy cop comedy in the world of Disney is not something I would think would work, but it actually worked really, really well. And they're kind of able to seamlessly, properly integrate in kind of the story about prejudice and judging people by their exterior into the story kind of in a fairly seamless manner that fits with the lore that they've established. It's just something so different in the world building it does, but as well as just the genre that it tackles.
We are in a really big hurry.
I am on
It?
break.
So for me, I'm throwing, it's in the B category for me, but it's at the top of the B category. It's a very good movie. Not quite up in the great, very good movie that I respect what it went for. The cast is so charming. It's not necessarily the one that I go back to, but it's one that I think is really well done. That brings us to the first movie in the big franchise of the weekend, Moana. And I'll be perfectly honest on this one. I'm throwing this in the B category. I know a lot of people absolutely love this movie. It has been played in my house by my little girls many, many, many times. I've just never connected with it as much as other people. I think the songs are good, but I don't think they're as good as, say, the songs in Frozen. I think there's some adventure in here that I think is enjoyable enough. It's just not a world that I get invested in. Like out on a raft at sea in a animated film, like it doesn't connect with me the way that other films on this list have connected with me. So it's been curious to me over the last several years as Moana has become the top streaming movie, even this weekend as Moana 2 is just shattering box office records. That's all a bit strange to me because I just don't view the movie in that same category. I just don't hype it up to that level. I think it's good, but that's kind of where it caps out for me. That'll bring us to Ralph Breaks the Internet. As previously mentioned on here, I am a massive fan of Wreck-It Ralph. By the time Ralph Breaks the Internet came out, my kids were old enough that they, had watched the first movie a zillion times. So I was very excited to see this movie. And when it came out, I left the theater very disappointed. And I think time has only made this movie worse. I'm throwing it in the D category. I do not think this movie works at all. On first viewing, I really enjoyed the first half of the movie. And just kind of the cameos, the references, the change of plot to it was like, oh, cool, this is charming enough. But with time, the first half isn't nearly as good because it's so referential to pop culture. And when the movie came out, it was already a little bit behind pop culture. And so jump forward 6 years, it's just all of these out-of-date references where so much of the humor relies on you remembering 2014 internet culture. Then we move into the back half of the film, and it feels like we resolve the actual plot of the movie 60, 70% of the way through the film, and then the subplot about Ralph's insecurities gets promoted to the A plot, and they didn't know how, and they have to like visually manifest a character arc or character default into a villain. And the way they went about doing it, whether showing the virus guy with the thing coming out of his, I hated the way that, like, it's just gross to look at, and then turning it into Ralph as this zombie thing, monster thing. I did not like it at all. Like, the back half of this movie just falls apart. And at this point in time, you're talking about a movie that was already dated at best. So I think this was a total misfire. Then we get another sequel, Frozen 2. If Ralph Breaks the Internet was a sequel that was dramatically worse than the first film, I actually think Frozen 2 is a pinch better than the first Frozen, so it's going up in the A tier, just a little bit ahead of the first Frozen. The simple reason for me when it comes to all of that is that I just think that it's a much better structured film where just all of our main characters are there at the beginning of the movie, as opposed to in the Frozen, the original one, you're introducing characters up to like 70% of the way through the movie. There's almost no songs in the back half of the film. And this movie evens that all out a lot more. And you get more time with them kind of spending time together on good terms, so getting that rapport, that banter between all of them. So it's the stuff that we liked about the first movie. It happens sooner in the film, and it lingers throughout the entire film, paced out a little bit better. I would say the songs in the first one are better, but not dramatically so. I think it's just slight step. These are still really good. Some great songs in here, just not quite let it go level of songs. So when you put all of that together, for me, Frozen 2 is a slight improvement over the first Frozen. That'll bring us to Raya and the Last Dragon, one of the COVID-era Disney films, a movie that I think largely got dramatically overlooked because it just came out at such an odd time in the world and for theaters in general. And so it just kind of got completely lost in everything going on. I think this movie's pretty great. It's going in the A category, where I'm just kind of into these sort of action adventure films. It's little martial arts. It's a little bit fantasy with its own mythology. We've got dragons thrown in there. I enjoy all of those elements, and I think they're done really well here. In particular, the way that they treated the way the cultures worked together and the way the villains were handled, where they did bad things. They were villainous in a sense, but they weren't mustache-twirling villains. They were people that were trying to protect themselves. There was a reason behind what they did when they did bad things. And maybe it was a moral failing, but there's a reason they kept going down that path. I thought that was so well handled. Even the way that they did the action, they did motion capture and stuff like that, so it looks really real. They had martial artists actually do all of this stuff. And throw it all together, you get this dynamic adventure film with a solid story, a great world that I enjoyed exploring, with some fun dragon quips in there at the same time. I think it's also a movie that got lost a little bit because it's not a musical. I think my friend Rachel Wagner mentioned that one of the things that held it back, that it's not a musical, means that it didn't have the same cultural ripples. And where Encanto, which we'll get to in just a second, didn't do great in theaters, but did great online. And some of that was because the songs became this phenom that children were listening to them in their cars. And so it just extended so much beyond just watching the movie. And with this film, it came out when theaters were dramatically reduced what they could do. And it didn't have that music to take it home. And I think that hurt its cultural impact, but I think the movie itself is very good. As we've just said, we just made it to Encanto. And this is one that, once again, we've watched a zillion times in my household. So many of the characters are so charming. and the songs are memorable, and they've been sung in my car during car rides many, many, many times. There's so much here that I really enjoy. I'm going to put this as a strong B, where I really enjoy a lot of it. I do wish that in developing this story about a family with all of these magic powers and abilities to do stuff, I think they could have gone somewhere more interesting with the villain or what they do with that. Like the idea that, hey, we've got powers, so we hang out at our house waiting for the next person to get powers. I think there's a little bit more you could have done with the story, with the world and the powers you've built out, with the set of characters. Resolving the house and how we'll get more powers just feels like one of the least compelling things that you could do. And so it's really all just there to do kind of an exploration of generational trauma. And I go, that's not the thing that's most interesting for me to do with this sort of setup. So that holds it back because I really do enjoy the characters, the songs, all of that stuff. We're in the final stretch. We've got Strange World. And this is one I was pretty excited for when they first announced it because just the graphics, everything clearly made it look like one of these old school serialized adventures, the same stuff that Indiana Jones was inspired by. What if we did a Disney animated version of that? That all sounds really cool to me. And then they like barely marketed it to a peculiar degree. There's so little marketing for this film. I didn't even realize a trailer had been dropped when the movie had come out. It was that degree of like, what on earth is going on here? And the movie itself, it has things that are exactly what I wanted it to be, with this adventures and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think they just got it wrong. They were trying to maybe do a little bit too much, and they didn't spend enough time on the most important elements for it. So the characters, in particular the father figure, is just insufferable. And there's not like the character that I think pops out as the best character. So that like the thing that stands out is the very obvious, the dad is toxic masculinity stand-in guy. And he's just insufferable. He's just a terrible parent. And he's been lost all this time. And it's not exactly clear to me how someone could be lost for that long with how small this island actually is. And from there, the big reveals about what the island actually is, it's kind of interesting. It's like, oh, okay. But a twist that I don't think really went anywhere, that besides them trying to make a statement about environmentalism, it just feels like such a hard pivot very late in the movie to like, you know, we need to keep our planet alive. That sort of thing that just heavy-handed without earning it. So for me, this is one that I wanted to enjoy a lot more, but it's also going down in the D category. This film just doesn't work. Just a couple left. We've got Wish, the movie put out for Disney's 100th anniversary. And unfortunately, it was a pretty big dud. I'm also going to throw this one down in the D category, where you could see what they were trying to do. There's ideas in here that are kind of interesting about the guy that grants people's wishes and keeps other ones. And you can kind of see where they were going with it. Was kind of interesting. And then even as they initially established the villain, it seemed like there were some layers to him there was a logic behind why he was withholding certain wishes and things like that, controlling things the way that he was. I think I can see where they're trying to go with this. But it was a movie that was trying to do so many different ideas and cram so much in there that it just kind of collapsed on the weight of its own ambitions, where the message by the end of it about these wishes was weird and confusing. And I don't know that it was actually that good of a message because it was handled so strange. And then it tries to build out like this mythology, the meta universe of all of these Disney films of where did all the characters in the other movies come from, and we're going to go off and start Zootopia and stuff like this. And it was just like, oh no, this is not a great idea. And then there's like multiple different comedic side characters, the quirky side characters. There's so much going on here. And then by the end of it, even the wife of the villain turns on him in a way that like just it felt so sudden and like it had like a nasty side to it. So a film that I can respect kind of what they were going for, but they absolutely were not able to pull it off with this film. And so for a movie that they wanted to be kind of this our 100th anniversary film, it really did not work. It was just filled with too many ideas that were not developed nearly well enough. And finally, Moana 2, the movie that came out this weekend. It was originally supposed to be a Disney Plus streaming series, and then after Strange World and Wish didn't do so well at the box office, then they're like, all right, what do we have that we can make into a guaranteed hit? Moana 2. Regardless of the quality of the film, it worked. Moana 2, gigantic, massive hit. Like, just shattering box office records, while something like Wicked is out there that is also a musical that draws a lot of the same audience. Both of them just killing at the box office. So their strategy of converting it on a financial level, it's a huge victory for Disney. Now, how good is the movie? I think it's good enough. It delivers everything that you kind of want in a Moana film, and not really anything fresh, new, and exciting. It aims for a single or a double, and I think it gets that. So I'm going to put this at the top of the C category. That it should have been a lot better than it was, but I don't think it's bad at all. I think it's fine. But when you're Disney, I think you should be delivering better than just fine. So it's got to be pretty low on this list, and I think everything else higher on the list is obviously, in my mind, better than Moana 2. But like I said, if you want to spend more time with these characters, you get that. It's got some more songs in there. The Get Lost song in particular is kind of the standout. You get all the more of the stuff you like. It's not quite as good. The story's a little bit clunky and how the pieces all fit together, but it's good enough. So, but shouldn't it be better than that? Don't you want your mega hit that shatters records to be better than good enough? That's kind of what I feel about this movie. Like, it doesn't do anything that steps on my toes the way Ralph Breaks the Internet does. I think it's a lot more cohesive than Wish or Strange World. But it's also a sequel to Moana, a movie that so many people love, and this movie is so distinctly a big step back from that film. So it's top of the C tier, but it is the C tier for me. Anyway, there's my list. You can check it out. You can create your own at that link down below in the description. Take a screenshot of it, share it on your stories on Instagram, tag me, and I will share some of those in my stories as well. Also remember, if you sign up for an annual subscription of Patreon this weekend with code Sean43 for my 43rd birthday, you'll get 43% off. By far the biggest sale I've ever done. Thank you so much for watching. Keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.